before Thanksgiving of 2023, I was finally in possession of a Rondo Products pre-order, the Bit Origin8, a 2.4 GHz wireless controller for the Nintendo Entertainment System and numerous USB platforms. I knew one for the NES would show up eventually. Retrobit had already put out controllers for the Super Nintendo, Nintendo 64, GameCube, Sega Genesis, and Sega Saturn, with a wireless controller for the Dreamcast coming in the near future. And now we have one for Nintendo's 8-bit platform. So today on Gaming Delight, we'll take a look at the Origin8 and see how well it works. Now, the cover of the box almost resembles the box of an original NES controller. Very nostalgic, I must admit. After opening, we get the appropriate goodies: the controller itself, instructions, a USB cable for charging, and wireless receivers. The controller comes in 3 colors: red and black to match the Famicom, gray to match the Game Boy, and the one you see here, classic gray and black, which matches the original NES controller. Like the NES controller, you've got a D-pad, without arrows of course, start and select buttons, and A and B buttons. But there's more. On top of the controller, you've got shoulder L and R buttons, and ZL and ZR buttons, likely to accommodate Nintendo Switch Online. You also get a USB-C port to charge the unit. Also on the face of the controller are a home button and a capture button for the Switch. But what really makes this stand out are the turbo switches, which almost makes this controller seem like a TurboGrafx 16 controller. They're perfect for rapid firing and shoot 'em up games. Now, the controller ports on the NES do have a tight grip on the receiver. Even the NES controller adapter for the Famicom has a tight grip on it. Now, as with every other 2.4 GHz wireless controller from Retrobit, press the sync button on the wireless receiver, press and hold the start button on the controller, and voila! The controller is now connected. Now let's start with a few NES games, starting with, of course, the Super Mario Bros. Games. No doubt about it, the first game works fine. With the turbo functions on, Fire Mario can swiftly shoot fireballs as long as I hold the B button. It's the same with every other Mario game on the 8-bit system, except for Mario 2, of course. But unless you want to pull off the 1-up trick or get as many coins as you can with multi-coin blocks, I wouldn't recommend using the A button with turbo. The same applies to the Japanese Mario 2 for the Famicom disk system. Super Mario Bros. 2, the Western version. Well, digging through sand is easy when it comes to the turbo, especially if you play as Toad. One thing to keep in mind, folks, is that not all games respond to controllers connected to the expansion port on the Famicom. Super Mario Bros. 2 or Super Mario USA is a fine example. At least the controller works fine on the NES, and although I don't have an AV Famicom, I'm certain it'll work on that one. But the regular Famicom, you're better off using the regular controllers for these games. Super Mario Bros. 3, turn on turbo while you're floating as Raccoon Mario or Tanuki Mario. While Duck Hunt is a light gun game, the Origin8, like any regular controller, can still be used to control the ducks and pause the game. Oh, and did I mention the dog irritates me? Now let's test it out on Mega Man 2. Well, with the turbo switch on over the B button, rapid fire shooting is a cinch. Using this method, I actually managed to beat the game despite going through many continues. Here are a couple games to try out that were chosen by viewers of the channel: DuckTales and the original Mario Bros. DuckTales is first. As you can see, turbo functions are completely unnecessary for this game. There's just no incentive. Other than that, The game works well wireless. Now for Mario Brothers. Like in Super Mario Bros., holding A while the turbo is on makes Mario jump repeatedly, which could be useful in knocking down multiple enemies if they're all on the same platform. Turbo on B? Well, there's nothing you can do in this game with the B button, sadly. Now, I don't have any major shoot-em-ups on the NES to demonstrate the full extent of the turbo switches, but since this controller works on the Switch, let's check out Gradius on the NES library of Nintendo Switch Online. The Konami code works, rapid firing works, no doubt about it. It'll definitely be the same way on original hardware. The same can be said with Star Soldier. So overall, shooters are the best kind of games for the Retrobit Origin8. Now for the Steam Deck. Let's try Atari Vault. Pong works fine. As does Centipede. Although the turbo didn't meet my expectations, at least not for this game. Up next is Rystar. Well, it works okay. Plus you only need 2 face buttons, one to jump and one to grab. But the turbo is not recommended for this game. Just for funsies, let's break the TurboGrafx 16 Mini out of mothballs and see how well it works. Yes, it does. The games I tested include Super Star Soldier, Galaga 88, and Castlevania Rondo of Blood. But to play TurboGrafx games properly with this controller requires the D-pad to be in its default mode. Please consult the instruction manual for more information on macros and compatibility. Unfortunately, I don't have an appropriate adapter to test this device on the NES Classic Edition. So overall, the Origin8 is a neat wireless controller for the NES and modern platforms. Online stores like Amazon and Rondo Products sell it for around $25. Okay. Retrobit has Nintendo home consoles from NES to N64 covered in terms of wireless controllers. They have a wired controller for the GameCube as well, mostly for 2D games in the Game Boy player. They've also covered Sega's Genesis and Saturn with a Dreamcast controller on the way. Who knows what this company will come up with next? PlayStation or Xbox maybe? We'll see. Thanks again for watching Gaming Delight. Until next time, happy gaming!